Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 2018 docudrama uh, crime film with a bit of a documentary twist, American Animals. Now, this is a film I first heard about in a comment on one of my videos, and I decided to check out the trailer, and I honestly thought it looked interesting, so I picked it up and I gave it a watch. Now, I didn't love the film, but I thought it was okay. I thought it honestly was pretty meh. It was an average docudrama, crime film. I thought it could have been better. I thought it could have been really special, but I think the approach that makes the film stand out is also the approach that hurts the film, and I'll get to that and to why I feel that way soon enough. But the film was directed by Bart Layton. This is a first time film for him. And I honestly think it's a pretty good directing job for a first time director. He knows his way around a camera, he's not completely lost. He knows how to add certain aesthetic elements to sequences that enhances their effectiveness. He knows how to do some really creative stuff. For instance, there's a shot in the film near the beginning where the camera is turned completely upside down. I don't know if that's due to editing. It might have just been they flipped the image upside down, but the way that it's handled is really a really a cool looking shot. Now, there are a lot of different shots in this film that are really cool looking and definitely showcase Layton's ability to really get some striking visuals out of his work for this film. There's a sequence in a parking lot with a shopping cart on fire that's really well shot. There's other sequences like that throughout the movie. The direction and a lot of the technical aspects of the film are real standouts, and I definitely did appreciate and ultimately really enjoyed seeing these elements on screen. It's just I personally feel the story wasn't as engaging as it could have been, and I also didn't really think the characters were particularly that likable or particularly that engaging either. So that ultimately made for a film that was only interesting and enthralling on a visual level for the most part. I kept watching the film because I wanted to see how things were going to unfold, but I pretty much knew how things were going to unfold. Things were not going to end well for these characters and for these people, but I also wanted to see what the director was going to do next and what his editor was going to do and what the cinematography was going to provide. And once the heist did eventually start, the film created some genuine sense of tension. I will definitely give it that. I mean, Bart Layton knows how to direct sequences that have tension and genuine suspense. So that definitely was not something that was lacking with this film or Bart's direction. I also feel he did a good job working with his actors, creating a comfortable environment for them, and also getting the most out of them. So I honestly think Bart Layton's a pretty talented director, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has up his sleeve next. That being said, I think he should have hired another writer. I think he should have collaborated with either one writer or maybe even two writers, because I think he just wasn't up to the task of creating a film based on the story and doing it all himself. I understand this is a passion project of his and it has been for many years, but this is one of those things where if you had a more established writer, you could punch up the dialogue, you could cut certain sequences out that seem a little bit extraneous, and you could also maybe have somebody who might try to convince him to handle the real life counterparts and the interview segments in a different way. Because to me personally, this film is not a wildly entertaining true crime thriller. It's not that insane either, according to the Daily Beast. And the reason why it's not a wildly entertaining true crime thriller is because it keeps going away from the strength of the film. The documentary elements of this movie have some okay interview segments with people involved with this case, but they are not strong enough on their own without extra details to really enhance the film, enhance the film's story. So what is happening when the film goes to these interview segments, it takes you out of the movie. You might be getting into the story and really buying into the performances of these actors, and you're wanting to see what happens next, but the pacing is all screwed because it constantly goes back and forth. There are times where it doesn't go back and forth, and there are times where it also tries to do both, and that doesn't help either. So it's one of those movies where it tries to be a documentary and a docudrama at the same time, and it winds up not being anything other than average when it comes to both particular genres of film. It's one of those movies that, in my opinion, should have picked one genre and stuck with it. Be a docudrama and let the story unfold in that way. I mean, the film would not have been 2 hours if it didn't have so many interview segments. And it would have had better pacing. And I think it would have been a better movie. And then on the other hand, the documentary segments, the interviews, they do have their selling points, and there are some interviews that definitely do showcase some genuine emotion and provide some interesting sort of context. So in that regard, you're left wanting, because you're like, okay, they aren't amazing, but they aren't amazing or as good as they could be because the film is not a documentary, so you don't have more of these segments. You don't have more of these interviews. You don't have extended interviews. You don't have more details because it's trying to do both things. To me personally, they should have Bart should have taken the route of focusing the film more on the docudrama, on the dramatization of real events, and then have a few moments now and then where you have a sequence with the real life counterpart and have the text on the screen that says it's the real life counterpart, and then save either some interviews for the end or save the interviews for a documentary of its own on as a special feature on the Blu-ray. That way you get the best possible product, the best possible version of the story, instead of average, ordinary versions of the story, because neither one can really live up to its full potential because they aren't given enough time to really rise to that level. That's what's frustrating about this movie, is that one of the elements that makes it unique is also one of the elements that makes the film average to me. It also doesn't help that these characters, they're not particularly that likable. And I understand that might be how they were in real life. It's not a case of they don't have chemistry with one another, the actors, or they don't deliver good performances, or they don't have personality. They have all of those things. It's just the way that they are characterized paints them out to be incredibly annoying young adults who go along with this heist and this fantasy of a heist and actually go through with it because they're bored and they want excitement in their life. And I guess they can't get it any other way. They can't get it through video games. They can't get it through other non-illegal alternatives. And as the film unfolds and they keep falling further and further down this hole, you start to sympathize with them less and less. And you start to really look at these characters and you look at them and you're like, You guys are fucking dumbasses. Why are you being so fucking dumb? Who cares about this heist? You know it's not gonna work. You know you're gonna get busted. You know you're gonna fucking get caught. You're not smart enough. You're not intelligent enough. You don't have the experience to do any of this shit. What are you doing? Why are you throwing your life away for a cheap thrill? But maybe that's the point. Maybe you're supposed to be frustrated. But it's just one of those things where it just makes for a film, though, when it comes to the characters, that you're really not that into whether or not they succeed with their heist. You don't care. There's no stakes. The stakes are they get caught, which is honestly the most likely scenario, and I guess maybe there's the other stake. The other stake is, will one of them actually get a clue and not go through with it? No, they all go through with it. Even the one that is, he says he's not going to do it, he does it anyway. Because he's peer pressured into doing it. Because either he's got serious self-esteem issues, or he just, it's one of those things where I guess he's semi-brainwashed by his friend, who's he kind of has this sort of cult vibe to him in terms of like a cult leader. But it's just one of those things that's like, I don't understand the motivations. What were the motivations to do this? Was it just they're bored and they want to make something out of their lives by being criminals? And that it just a lot of the relatability goes out the window. It's just one of those things where you're just watching a bunch of smug young adults who don't know better fuck up and get arrested. That's what I mean by it's a lot of build-up for not much payoff, because you know how things are going to end. They're going to end badly, and that's exactly what happens. And I guess you get a little bit of a recollection at the end from these people, once they've grown up and been out of jail, that what they did was foolish and unnecessary, but and it wasn't necessarily worth it. But it's just one of those things, like, I don't know. It's just one of those movies where you're just like, why should I care? And I don't think the film really does a good enough job making you really care whether or not they complete this heist. And a large part, it's due to these characters that either don't have as much character development as they could. Like, for example, Chaz, there's no character development with this guy. He just comes across as an arrogant asshole. Honestly, most people come across as arrogant assholes. Arrogant assholes. That's a better name for this movie. American Animals? Nah, arrogant assholes. I guess maybe you're waiting for them to get their comeuppance, but they're not big enough of assholes, or their arrogance isn't high enough in terms of the level that you're like rooting for them to get busted. You're just like, get it over with already. It's just one of those things. That being said, the reason why I could still sit through and I was still interested into seeing how things ended is, like I said, the aesthetic stuff, but also I genuinely liked the performances by most of the cast members, despite the fact that they aren't really particularly that likable as characters. They still delivered good performances. Evan Peters as Warren Lipka, Barry Keoghan as Spencer, Blake Jenner, he was okay as Chaz, but you know, I wouldn't call it an amazing performance. Jared Abramson as Eric Borsuk. You also even had Udo Kier, who played this guy who may or may not have really existed, Mr. Vanderhoek. And then you had Ann Dowd, who played Betty Jean Gooch. Now, apparently there are also actors and actresses who portrayed other supposedly real-life counterparts in this This I didn't know this. Gary Barasaba and Lara Grice, they portray Warren's parents because I guess they didn't want to appear as themselves. Jane McNeil portrays Spencer's mother, and Whitney Goyne portrays Chaz's mother, and Wayne Duvall appears as Coach Bill Wilton. But Warren Lipka, Spencer Reinhardt, Chaz Allen, Eric Borsuk, and Betty Jean Gooch all appear as themselves. So that's interesting. Definitely brings to mind the concept of the illusion of reality, which is something this film does play with, and in some ways it does a good job with that. Like, for instance, there's a sequence that's really well done where the two guys, Warren and Spencer, they're going to New York to try to rendezvous with somebody to maybe set up a deal for potential sale of illegal art. And because the whole premise of this film is based around this true story of these students who decided to steal these rare books from Transylvania University, which apparently is a real university that is in the United States. That's the first time I've heard of Transylvania University. I didn't know that there was a Transylvania University in the U.S. I was like, what? Romania? Like, no, the United States. But anyway, these rare books are in this this collection room that is only resided over by a librarian. So these group of arrogant assholes decide to plan a heist and steal the books and make millions of dollars. But even the amount of money isn't that much. I mean, for the time, it might have been a lot, but I mean, $12 million, considering everything that they're sacrificing, everything they're putting into this, everything that they could lose. And they also have to split the profits with themselves as well as the buyer. So ultimately, they're not really going to walk out with that much money. So it's one of those things, it's like, seems like a lot of work for not that much money. And a lot of risk for not that much money. So that's another reason why it just seems very small in terms of the payoff. And you don't really care whether they succeed with the heist. Because it's not like they're going to make off with like a really, large sum. And they're going to make off with even less because they don't even actually steal the most valuable books. So, but yeah, going back to what I mean by illusion of reality. So they go to New York, and they're waiting for a buyer, and they're talking about their recollection of what the person looked like that they were communicating with. And Warren's description is different than Spencer's. Spencer describes him as like a younger guy with like a ponytail and a goatee, and I think he was wearing like a blue tie or something. And then Spencer describes him. Well, actually, yeah, Warren is the one that describes him as an older man, and Spencer is the one that describes him as this younger guy. So yeah, Warren describes him as this older man with like gray hair and in a fancy suit. So, and there's a moment where the two memories merge and sort of blend together, and you can't really tell whether they are real or not. And so there are moments like that in the film that are really well done. There's another moment where they're watching a black and white movie on TV. I think it might have been Ocean's 11, the original or something. I don't know 100% for sure. So they're watching a movie, black and white film on TV, and then the next sequence is in black and white for a little bit before it turns to color. So there's a lot of moments like that, editing wise and cinematography wise, that are really inspired. And that's why I ultimately am glad that I checked it out, just for stuff like that, as a fan of film, to see those kind of things unfold. The cinematography by Ole Brat Birkeland, and the editing by Nick Fenton, Chris Gill, Luke Dunkley, and Julian Hart. That's a lot of editors, but they all work together really well and were quite a great team. They did an excellent job editing this film. In a lot of ways, the editing is the most standout thing about this movie, other than the direction and the performances by a good number of the cast members. It also features music by Anne Nikitin, but the music is pretty much just atmosphere and background music. It's not really anything that you'll want to listen to on your spare time. The film uses songs more to add more emphasis to sequences versus a score, and it is fairly effective in that way. There's some rap songs that they were singing along to that really did help initially kind of make the characters a little likable, but as the film goes on and you really reveal their true intentions, that isn't enough to really make you connect with them consistently. It's just a very fleeting moment of like, hey, these guys are kind of cool. Look at them having fun with one another, and then it's just a feeling, at least to me personally, that doesn't last that long. Uh, like I said, the film, it's a bit too long. It's 116 minutes, but the story that's here, there's really not a lot of meat on the bone. So it's not one of those stories that really needed to be told in 2 hours. And like I said, the big reason why it's that long is because of its decision to be part docudrama and part documentary. And one more thing I want to mention about the movie is that this is one of the films that was produced by MoviePass Ventures. That has aged terribly because and I remember seeing ads from MoviePass about this movie sent to my email when I was a MoviePass subscriber, and I was like, it doesn't really look like my kind of movie, so I never really I never went and saw it. And the film didn't do that great. It only made like 3.5 million, but it's not like this movie was going to be a box office smash to begin with. I've seen worse films that deal with real life stories of crime, but I've also seen better. This film seems rather. I honestly didn't think it was as crazy as or as insane as a lot of people made it out to be. It just seemed to be rather tame to me personally when it comes to the craziness. If you want a crazy film based on a true story, watch War Dogs. Like, that's crazy. This is insane. This is a crazy ass movie, but it's also, in my opinion, it's a better film. And more people were talked about American Animals than they did about War Dogs. And I don't get it. I mean, Jonah Hill and Miles Teller actually provided some genuine laughs. That's another thing about this movie. It didn't really have any moments that were really that funny. And with something that's honestly a little absurd and a little silly, I think they could have played that up a little bit more. They took things, and there are moments where they tried to be funny, but I don't think they really were that great in terms of the comedic timing or what they were doing with their comedy. But War Dogs is a much better film in that regard. And yes, it takes creative liberties, but at the same time, it still tells a really compelling story. And it's interesting and it's entertaining throughout. And despite the fact that it's around the same sort of running time, this is 114 minutes and American Animals is 116, War Dogs is a much more consistently paced and entertaining movie. Another good example of a film based on a true story and a crime that's more compelling and more captivating is I, Tonya. That's another movie that has a lot of dark comedy elements, but also has a lot of elements in terms of the true crime stuff that really play up on the absurdity and really make it something that really stands out in a good way. American Animals has moments like that where they're dressed like old men, but doesn't really go as far with things as you think they could, and it's just rather subdued approach when it comes to the honestly really absurd silliness of the entire heist and the entire concept behind the movie and behind what these young men were deciding to do. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say about American Animals. I've talked about it for longer than I thought I was going to be honest. Except I wouldn't necessarily give it my highest recommendation, but it's a film that I would recommend you check out if it sounds interesting to you, if you like the trailer, because you might like it a lot more than me. But I just thought, yeah, I thought it was pretty average, and I still feel it should be called Arrogant Assholes. But anyway, thanks for watching my review, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.